and welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I am Ladi Akiridulwale. The headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his forces are repelling constant attacks in two key towns in Ukraine. Russia says its army has conducted a retaliatory strike in eastern Ukraine, indicating that more than 600 Ukrainian troops have been killed. And it's yet more freedom for captured soldiers as Russia and Ukraine exchange 100 prisoners of war. We'll begin in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, where the country's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his forces are repelling constant attacks on the town of Bakhmut in the eastern Donbas region and holding their positions in nearby Soledar in very difficult conditions. Speaking during his usual nightly address, Mr. Zelensky issued a fresh denunciation of what he said was Russia's failure to observe a truce it had proclaimed for Orthodox Christmas by staging attacks on Ukrainian cities.
The situation on the front line has not changed significantly during the first week of the year. Heavy fights continue in Luhansk region and Donetsk region. Every hotspot in these areas is well known. Bakhmut is holding on, despite everything. And even though most of the town has been destroyed by Russian strikes, our soldiers are repelling constant Russian attempts to advance. Soledar is holding on, even though there is even greater destruction and things are very difficult. There is no piece of land near these two cities where the occupiers would not spare their lives for the crazy ideas of the masters of the Russian regime. This is one of the bloodiest places on the front.
Meanwhile, Russia says its army conducted a deadly retaliatory strike in the eastern Ukrainian city of Kramatorsk. Its defense ministry says more than 600 Ukrainian servicemen were killed when two buildings used as barracks were targeted in the city in the eastern region. Ukrainian officials, however, denied this claim. The ministry said the attack was in response to a Ukrainian strike at the start of the year on the Russian-occupied town of Makivka, in which Russia said 89 of its troops were killed.
As an answer to the criminal attack of Kyiv regime in the first minutes of January 2023 against the location of temporary deployment of Russian military personnel near Makivka and Donetsk, People's Republic, the command of the United Group of Russian troops carried out a revenge operation. Over the past 24 hours, Russian intelligence service has discovered and reliably confirmed through several independent channels the temporary deployment points of the Ukrainian forces in Kramatorsk. There were over 700 Ukrainian servicemen in dorm number 28 and over 600 servicemen in dorm number 47. More than 600 Ukrainian servicemen have been killed in massive rocket attacks on these locations of temporary deployment of the Ukrainian forces units.
Last week, Friday, we had reported that President Vladimir Putin declared a 36-hour ceasefire in Ukraine for Orthodox Christmas. This truce was, however, dismissed by the Ukrainians. But the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut was hit despite Moscow's declaration, killing 2 people and injuring 13 others. Shellfire echoed over the weekend around the near-deserted streets of the town, the current focus of the most intense fighting since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Sparkling clear skies and a dusting of snow belied the devastation of the city abandoned by most of its pre-war population of 70,000, where humanitarian volunteers now risk their lives to support those who stay. 30-year-old humanitarian volunteer Vasil Elesin says, quote, "When Putin says there's a ceasefire, it's actually the other way around. There's no ceasefire. They shelled us a lot yesterday." Western media confirmed shellfire echoed around the near-deserted streets of Bakhmut, but was not able to ascertain the origin of the shells. But even as war continues, Russia and Ukraine carried out a prisoner exchange with a total of 100 soldiers returning to their respective home countries. That's according to the authorities from both sides. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement that as a result of the negotiation process, 50 Russian soldiers captured by Ukraine were returned to Russia. Andriy Yermak, head of the Ukrainian Presidential Office, confirmed the exchange, saying that 50 Ukrainian soldiers captured by Russia also returned home. Mr. Yermak said in a statement, quote, "We returned the people who were captured at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, as well as the defenders of Mariupol. The guys from the Donetsk direction, from near Bakhmut, as well as from Kiev, Chernihiv, Kherson, and other regions. This is not the last exchange. Our task is to return all our people, and we will fulfill that." This is the 36th exchange between Russia and Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson says Sweden is confident that Turkey will approve its application to join the NATO military alliance, but cannot fulfill all the conditions Ankara has set for its support. The Prime Minister made this known at a defense think tank conference in Sweden. Finland and Sweden signed a 3-year agreement with Turkey in 2022 aimed at overcoming Ankara's objections to their membership of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They applied in May last year to join NATO in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but Turkey objected and accused the countries of harboring militants, including from the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party. One sticking point has been extraditions of people Turkey regards as terrorists. Ankara expressed disappointment with a decision late last year from Sweden's top court to stop a request to extradite a journalist with alleged links to Islamic scholar Fethullah Gulen, blamed by Turkey for an attempted coup. Also addressing the conference, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said continued support for Ukraine was the answer to Russia's military buildup. In the United Kingdom, the Justice Secretary Dominic Raab will host a meeting alongside his Dutch counterpart in London in March, which will see justice ministers from across the globe gather to support the International Criminal Court's investigation into alleged Russian war crimes in Ukraine. According to the statement, the United Kingdom government said the meeting aims to increase the global financial and practical support being offered to the ICC and coordinate efforts to ensure it has all its needs to carry out investigations and prosecute those responsible. The statement added that the prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan, will address the London meeting, providing an insight into the court's work and the role of the international community in supporting its investigations. Last week, British politicians from across the political divide expressed their support for the creation of a special tribunal to investigate Russia's crimes of aggression in Ukraine. They include opposition leader Keir Starmer and former Conservative Party leader and MP Ian Duncan Smith, according to the British newspaper The Observer, which said a copy of the statement was shared with it. Let's talk now to Andrzej Macisak, deputy head of the foreign desk at the Pravda newspaper. He joins us from Bratislava in Slovakia. Good morning to you, Andrzej. Happy New Year.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you too. Thank you.
Let's begin with this back and forth on the issue of attacks. Russia offered a truce on Friday and Saturday, to be precise, over the Orthodox Christmas. The Ukrainians dismissed this. So why are they surprised that they are under attack?
Look, on one hand, you can say that they shouldn't be surprised that they're under attack. And they don't think they're surprised. They're just saying that, as it was said, if Vladimir Putin offer ceasefire, in fact, it's the other way around. During the Catholic Christmas day, 24th of December and 25th of December, Kherson was heavily shelled. At least 10 people were killed. This kind of offer of truce during the Orthodox Christmas, I think, even if I would give Mr. Putin some benefit of doubt that he meant it, it wouldn't solve anything. This was just a PR stunt, and we saw you cannot just stop the war that was really. This is the war that is brutally waged against Ukraine, and you cannot just stop it by offering a 36-hour ceasefire and claiming, okay, now let's sing hallelujah and let's celebrate Christmas. This is, I really don't think that nobody thought that it will work. Nobody.
Now, there are also back and forths over the issue of attacks. Last week, the Ukrainians attacked Makivka, where quite a number of Russian soldiers were killed. The number is being disputed. Different numbers are being given by the Russians and different numbers are being given by the Ukrainians. The same thing has happened over the weekend. The Russians have carried out what they call a retaliatory strike, where they're also claiming that quite a large number of Ukrainian soldiers were killed. The Ukrainians are disputing that. Again, what do you make of this, especially against the background that the fighting is supposed to be in Ukraine? So when we have this strikes back and forth, again, it gives the impression that the conflict may be spreading.
It is. Everything is happening in the territory of Ukraine. Makivka is on Ukraine territory. It's occupied by Russia, but it's Ukrainian territory. So I think that this is the war. I think that Ukrainians had every right to strike the military installations in Makivka, and of course the number of killed soldiers is disputed. But it seems it was a significant number, because Russians are usually very reluctant, and of course also Ukrainians, but Russians are usually very reluctant to say anything about their military casualties. And if this time they said it was over 80 soldiers killed, I think they knew they just simply cannot brush off as some small attack. Regarding Kramatorsk, we don't know all the details, but it seems I saw some reports also from Reuters and from some Western journalists who are on the ground, basically saying it doesn't seem that anything was really hit in Kramatorsk. It seems that Russians tried, but they missed. So we will see maybe in the next few hours if any info that will be confirmed by the independent sources will be given from the people in Kramatorsk and so on. So far, I would be somehow cautious about saying what happened, but it doesn't seem to me from the preliminary reports, also from the people on the ground, that the Russian strike was that successful. They're claiming like 600 Ukrainian soldiers killed. We saw the clip from Russians, from General Konashenko. He's a chief spokesman of the Russian Ministry of Defense, and he is very well known for exaggeration, blatant lies, and misinformation. So let's wait and see if this will be somehow independently confirmed.
Well, of course, the representatives of all militaries can be said, especially in the situation of war, to be subject to exaggeration and to some extent misinformation. But let me bring you to something that happened last week. You're speaking to us from Bratislava in Slovakia. One of your neighbors quietly joined the EU, and I say quietly not because they were trying to hide it, but because it seemed to have got lost in the shuffle of the news, because so many other things were happening at the same time last week. How important is it for Slovenia to have joined the EU, particularly at this time when the whole issue of EU expansion and so on is the main reason that Russia, for example, has given for this entire conflict?
Just to correct a few things, excuse me, it was Croatia, not Slovenia, and Croatia joined Eurozone, not the EU. Croatia is in the EU for a couple of years. So they just joined Eurozone. It means they are going to use euro currency. And in fact, this is not a big news. So there was nothing really to hide. I think it was just the if you want to join the Eurozone, if you want to pay by euro, the common currency in the EU, you have to fulfill certain criteria, which takes some time. So, for example, in case of Slovakia, we joined the EU in 2004, and we joined the Eurozone in 2009. And many countries joined also in the last years. Also Slovenia, for example, that was mentioned. Baltic states, others in the Central and Eastern Europe didn't, like for example Czechia, Poland, and Hungary. So in a sense, this is an important news from the economic point of view for Croatia, but geopolitically not really that much. Croatia, it's not a direct neighbor of Slovakia, but for example, as I'm sure that many of your watchers know, Slovakia is a landlocked country. Croatia has a sea, and during the summer season, many Slovaks went to go to Croatia for a holiday. We used to say that Adriatic Sea is a Slovak sea, and as Slovaks use euro, and now also Croats will use euro, it will be also easier for tourists from the European countries to go there. They don't need to exchange money and so on. Plus, also it has to be said that Croatia also joined the Schengen zone, which is a zone of free movement of people, goods, and services within the EU. So it is also easier to travel. But again, from the geopolitical point of view, not really. This doesn't have anything. It doesn't have anything to do with the Russian war, except maybe as a symbolism that the countries are trying to be as united as possible, and also are trying to fulfill the criteria important for the EU, like joining Eurozone, joining Schengen.
I take your point and your correction about it being Croatia, not Slovenia. That was my error. It is in fact Croatia. But I asked that question because, as you pointed out in your answer, there is a difference between joining the EU and joining the Eurozone. Croatia had been in the EU before now, but I'm asking about why do you think a country like that would join the Eurozone now? Because, I mean, if you are in the EU, you already get a lot of benefits. Now, moving into the Eurozone, perhaps, you can correct me if I'm wrong, confers additional benefits on you, particularly economic. But then, as you pointed out, there's a symbolism there, like you're thumbing your hand up at the Russians to say, look, not only are we going to be in the EU, we're going to go even deeper into the EU, like some of the other countries around us have.
Yes, you can say that. Again, it's basically you can claim that it's a little bit more complicated than that, but basically you can say you have EU, you have Schengen zone, and you also have Eurozone. If you are in both three, you are basically in really the core of the EU. So being in the core gives you some benefits. You are sitting at the table with the countries like, especially on economic policies, with the countries like Germany, France, others, Spain. So big players. They all use Eurozone. It seems maybe also joining the Eurozone, probably it will help the Croatia also to fight the inflation, at least partly. We will see. It's kind of a tricky thing, but if you look at the inflation in the Eurozone, in December it was down to 10%. For example, the highest inflation for the EU country is Hungary. They are not in the Eurozone, and they are over 20%. Again, I'm not an economist. I don't want to just mix everything into one basket, but we will see. Maybe for Croatia, joining Eurozone, it will be also a good tool to fighting inflation. On the other hand, it must be said that there is now a discussion in Croatia that if some prices will go up when they joined the Eurozone, because if you use euro, it seems that some retailers, some markets basically try to use this situation, and the price of coffee was about €1.10 in December, and now it's around 1.20 cents. So we'll see what this will do with prices. And yes, I think symbolism is there. The EU is trying to be as united as possible. Is trying to, because being united, I think it's our best defense against aggressive Russia. So if more countries are willing to join even more exclusive clubs within the EU, it really shows the idea of this unity and cooperation works. So there is a bit of a signal, political signal to Russia that it will be very hard for Russia to somehow divide us and conquer.
Now, my final question before I let you go is that could this also be about gas supplies, for example, energy supplies, more broadly speaking? I mean, the country where you are, I remember when I asked you last, you said that, well, you know, we're not really badly affected by all of this. Things are not as bad as they are in some countries. And perhaps the EU cushion, the zone cushion, the Schengen area cushion is something that your neighbors, which Slovakia is already benefiting from, your neighbors also want. So could there be the possibility that, you know, there's more competition perhaps for gas?
Look, we will see. It's for now, if you look at the statistics, it's very clear that we are importing less and less and less and less gas from Russia, all of us. Even the countries like mine, it was very, very heavily dependent on Russian gas. Even Bulgaria, you know, now they have an agreement with Turkey. So at this moment, and I think this is a correct statistics. In fact, the EU is importing more gas from Algeria than from Russia. So it's very clear that the Russian supplies are at this moment not that important as they were even few months ago. What we will see in 2023 is, of course, the attempt to make it permanent, I would say. I think that no matter what will happen with the Russian war against Ukraine, I don't really think that Russia will come back, will return as a primary supplier of gas for the EU. We are really trying to diversify all the supplies, and but of course it also takes some time. We will see what will happen with LNG, because if demand for the LNG, especially for China, will go up, Europe might have some problems to buy more LNG. So, but we have some time to prepare for it. For now, the winter period is not that bad. It's relatively mild. In fact, it's January and it's raining in Bratislava where I'm sitting. It should be snowing. So this plays against Mr. Putin, because maybe you saw some strange political ads from Russians, like saying that Europe will be frozen. It's really not happening. Also because it seems also because of the climate change, which is of course the big issue, and we shouldn't forget about it. But I really think that there are the most important thing we should emphasize are Russia will never be that important suppliers of gas for EU as before the war. And secondly, and I think I mentioned that here in the past, I think that this is also our chance to move from using a fossil fuel energy and really to moving to the renewable sources, to new sources, to green energy, which will also really really be. I think it will be beneficial for, of course, it will be beneficial as we are trying to fight Russia in this kind of energy war, but also it will be beneficial for all of us, I think. Indeed. Because of the climate change.
Indeed, indeed. Andrew Matsak, thank you so much for your time this morning. To have a pleasant day ahead.
You too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
And after the break, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promises families of those killed when Iran shot down a Ukrainian civil airliner in 2020 that Iran would face accountability. Details in a moment. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back. The Belarusian Defense Ministry has announced that Russia and Belarus will hold joint Air Force exercises in Belarus from January the 16th to February the 1st. The ministry said a Russian Air Division team has already arrived in Minsk, adding that during the tactical flight exercise, all airfields and training grounds of the Air Force and Air Defense Forces of the Armed Forces of Belarus will be involved. The ministry also said it is continuing to increase its joint military groupings with Russia in Belarus, indicating that personnel, weapons, military and special equipment of the armed forces of the Russian Federation will continue to arrive to the Republic of Belarus. Meanwhile, it's a similar scenario as Japan's self-defense forces paratroops conducted a joint military drill with the United States, British and Australian Army. About 1,000 soldiers from Japan's 1st Airborne Brigade, the country's only unit for parachute assaults, participated in the hour-long drill, which is held annually in January. Japanese Defense Minister Yasukazu Hamada, after inspecting the drill, said, quote, "This time, in addition to 70 U.S. Army soldiers, about 30 from the Australian and British Army also participated in this exercise. And through this, I believe that we have demonstrated a strong cooperation and ties with our allies. I hope our troops will continue to conduct all kinds of military exercises and live up to our people's trust and expectations." The drill also mobilized 20 aircraft, including transport aircraft C-130s and transport helicopters, as well as dozens of military vehicles, including Japan's Type 12 surface-to-ship missiles. In another development, German police have detained an Iranian national on suspicion of planning a terror attack. Police in the western city of Munster said the 32-year-old man is believed to have procured unspecified amounts of the toxins cyanide and ricin in preparation for an Islamist-motivated attack. According to the police, the suspect was detained following an investigation by the North Rhine Central Office for the Prosecution of Terrorism, a unit of the Dusseldorf Public Prosecutor's Office. Olga Hemmin of that office said a serious tip-off from a security agency of a friendly state prompted police to intervene during the night, where they seized electronic storage devices but found neither cyanide nor ricin during a search of the suspect's home in the city of Castrop-Rauxel. Police said an investigation is ongoing, adding that another person was also being held over the same matter. And Iran has hanged 2 men for allegedly killing a member of the security forces during nationwide protests that followed the death of 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman Mahsa Amini on September the 16th. Footage aired on Iranian state television shows 2 defendants identified as Mohammad Mehdi Karami and Sayed Mohammad Hosseini testifying during a court hearing on an unspecified date in December of 2022. Both men were convicted of killing Ruhollah Ajamian, a member of the Basij paramilitary force militia. The latest executions bring to 4 the number of protesters officially known to have been executed in the aftermath of the unrest. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has promised the families of those killed when Iran shot down a Ukrainian civilian airliner in 2020 that Iran would face accountability. Speaking at an event to mark 3 years since 176 people were killed when Iran shot down Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 near Tehran, Mr. Trudeau said that if Iran didn't comply with demands for arbitration, the matter would be taken to the International Court of Justice.
Of the Iranian regime's heinous disregard for human life. Your grief has been compounded by their refusal to be held accountable. Nothing will ever bring your loved ones back. But when you lose someone so senselessly, finding justice is a part of mourning. We need closure in order to heal. And Iran's refusal to be held accountable is denying you that. 2 weeks ago, we initiated a process to bring the Islamic Republic of Iran into binding arbitration to ensure accountability and justice. We worked alongside the UK, Sweden, and of course, Ukraine, who are dealing with the horrific invasion by Russia, supported and aided by the Islamic Republic of Iran. But Ukraine and President Volodymyr Zelensky ensured that the measures were taken so that we could move forward in time for the 3rd anniversary. And I want to thank the Ukrainian government and Ukrainian people for standing, even as they grieve through their losses, standing with the people of Iran.
Let's talk now to Ambrose Igboke, Chairman, Guild of Public Affairs Analysts in Enugu State, from where he joins us virtually. Good morning to you and Happy New Year. Okay, I understand that we lost Mr. Igboke. We'll try to get back to him in just a couple of moments. Let's swerve to the UK, where British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said he's willing to discuss pay rises for nurses ahead of a meeting with public sector trade union leaders in an effort to end the biggest wave of industrial disputes in decades. The United Kingdom's National Health Service, the NHS, long treasured and funded by taxpayers, delivers free care to all, but is under strain following years of relative underinvestment and the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. The strikes involving nurses and ambulance workers, staff shortages and winter flu have led some hospitals to declare critical incidents. Patients are facing hour-long waits for ambulances as some are being treated in corridors. But Mr. Sunak, who is under increasing pressure, including from members of his Conservative Party, to improve wage offers to healthcare staff, said the government was willing to have conversations with union leaders about pay in spite of ministers previously refusing to reopen talks about this year's deal.
You've had what you're getting. It's been announced. There isn't going to be any more. Now you get on with it.
But we will work with the sector to move towards all children studying some form of maths to 18. The mindset that we need to change. That's why, as soon as we can, the government will reduce the burden of taxation on working people.
Deportation scheme, and also could we expect another offshore
And when we return, Ukraine sanctions Vienna-based opera singer Anna Netrebko, dozens of Russian artists and public figures. Details in a moment. Join us again. All right, welcome back. And of course, at this time, Ini John McWell of our business desk joins me Monday morning. Morning, Ini. Ukraine's gross domestic product fell more than 30% in 2022. Now, some will say this isn't a surprise. it's just been made official.
Yes, just the numbers have come out that they fell by 34%, and that the economy is hugely depending on foreign aids, which is why I think for me what did not come as a lot of a surprise is that the hryvnia, their currency, has remained stable, but is based mostly on foreign aid, and we see that they've gotten about $31 billion in foreign grants so far, and well, they are trying to earn money. Thank God for the grain exports, you know, that came in place since August. But even with that, the economy is still hugely dependent on grants, and we don't know what else will happen to their GDP, you know, as we begin the 2023.
Yeah, and incidentally, I'm happy you mentioned the grain deal, because now they've uncovered apparently a corruption scheme involving that grain deal.
Yeah, well, it's not a Nigerian story. This is a Ukraine story. This is a Ukraine story. And unfortunately, in the midst of all of this, due to that corruption, that corrupt scheme, Ukraine has lost about $186 million since the deal started in August. Because it's come to the notice of some of the authorities that the process of getting, obviously, because the country is at war, a lot of things have been scattered and not the way it used to be. There seems to be a longer process to acquire these grains from the farmers and then to get it to the point of exporting it. So in between all of that, it's been noticed that taxes have been evaded, you know. So, you know, the way we have it here, that the farmers there are poor farmers, they get exploited by, you know, maybe most of the foreigners, and in between the chain and all of that. So that's what has been happening. And the taxes that are supposed to be going to the Ukraine state, at least to buffer some of the infrastructural damage and economic damage that they face, amounting to about $186 million, has been lost in between. What they will do about this is what they haven't said yet. They've just discovered this scheme. So I'm sure that President Zelensky and the other officials will look for ways to maybe cut some of those bureaucracy, because that's where it actually comes in.
This kind of leaks can happen.
Yes, that's where it's actually happening from. So if they can deal with that, and maybe this will put some money in the purse of Ukraine.
Now, let's talk now on the flip side. The European markets seem to have opened positively this week.
It's thanks to China.
Yeah, what's the link?
Okay, so China is the third largest exporter of European products. The third. So if China opens up, then you have more demand for European products, farm produce, and some of those manufactured products will head to China, you understand, and then that means there's more money coming for Europe. You know, but we also know that the complete picture of this is it's a risk for the world. Now we're hearing of a new strain of COVID-19 in South Africa. Now we're seeing some countries closing their borders to travelers from China and Chinese people. You know, so even though the market is, you know, the market reacts to every news. So now the European market is happy that they've remove all the strict zero COVID-19
policies gone and all that.
But the reality is there are now more threats because of the travelers that are actually coming from China to Europe and some other countries, even to Nigeria, because China is a major destination, import destination for Nigeria, and a lot of Nigerians do business with China. So I hope we do not get COVID into the countries again, and then you go back to that. Well, I don't think we'll go back to, I will not even say, because a lot of people have said that the world has learned to live with COVID. So we are now wiser and smarter, so we know how to handle COVID, even when it comes with its new variants, as we're hearing in South Africa.
Yeah, so this good news is tinged with some caution.
Yes, it is, unfortunately.
Thank you, Ini and her team. We'll have more on the business news with happenings right across the world after this show on Business Morning and later on Business Incorporated. Thanks, Ini.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go back now. I understand that we have Mr. Ambrose Igboke, Chairman, Guild of Public Affairs Analysts, Enugu State Chapter, with us. The signals was interrupted just as we were about to go on to him. But good morning to you, Mr. Igboke. Happy New Year. we seem to have had the same issue once again. Let's take some of the sports news out of this conflict. Russia's anti-doping agency RUSADA's Director General Veronika Loginova claims domestic doping in Russian athletics has dropped drastically. Ms. Loginova points to the independent audit into anti-doping changes in the Russian Athletics Federation, RUSAF, which shows a decline. RUSADA is still working on becoming compliant with the World Anti-Doping Code, which would further free the country for any restrictions in sports competitions. Russia is hoping to be reinstated into competition this year. And boxing legend Mike Tyson believes Ukrainian heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk is going to get everybody in the blue ribbon division due to his ring intelligence and awkwardness. Like Mr. Usyk, Mr. Tyson was a smaller heavyweight who went on to achieve greatness in the division. For all he has achieved as both an amateur and a professional, Mr. Usyk may face the toughest test of his boxing life in the coming months, as an undisputed fight with Tyson Fury appears to loom large. Talks are said to be progressing well between the two camps, and an agreement for the first undisputed heavyweight world title fight in over 20 years is thought not to be far away. And finally on the program, Ukraine has placed dozens of Russian artists and other public figures on a sanctions list, according to a decree published by the president's office. The announcement lists big names from the world of opera, film, and pop music amidst the ongoing war in Ukraine. One of the most well-known names is that of Vienna-based opera singer Anna Netrebko, who has come under fire for being too close to the Kremlin and too uncritical of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In February last year, Ms. Netrebko said she was, quote, opposed to the war, but she is Russian and loves her country, and that she has many friends in Ukraine, and the pain and suffering right now breaks her heart. She added that forcing artists and other public personalities to give their political opinions in public and to denounce their homeland was not right. The sanctions list also includes Russian pop star Philip Kirkorov and actor and director Nikita Mikhalkov, winner of awards from film festivals including Cannes and Venice. According to the TASS news agency, Ms. Netrebko and 118 others, including 3 Ukrainians, these talents, of course, will be banned in Ukraine over the next 10 years, and sanctions have been placed on their assets. We do apologize. We're unable to bring you Ambrose Igbokwe today. It seems as if we have some significant challenges with the connections, but we do promise that we will bring him as soon as we can in the course of this week. But for now, my name is Ladi Akeri Doluale. Do have yourselves a pleasant Monday and week ahead. Good morning.